Rees praised Shedeur's fight, his poise, and the way he kept the Browns alive deep into the game. He highlighted how Shedeur stayed present, battled through chaos, and kept Cleveland 1 or 2 plays away from a legitimate upset. But then came the part that spoke volumes. Rees admitted that Shedeur naturally gravitates toward throwing deep. He pointed to that second-to-last play, the vertical shot that nearly changed the entire game, and openly acknowledged that the kid enjoys pushing the ball downfield. That's rare praise from an NFL coordinator. You don't hear that unless it's real. He even referenced the 2-minute drill, crediting Shadur for the dime he dropped on David Njoku, the kind of throw that only quarterbacks with elite arm talent can make. He talked about receivers being able to play off those deep balls and said that when Shadur launches one, he genuinely believes someone is coming down with it. Those aren't rookie project comments. Those are the kinds of compliments coaches give to quarterbacks they know have something special. And that's exactly the problem. If Rees sees the arm talent, if he sees the composure, if he sees the upside that could reshape a stagnant offense, then why hasn't Shadur been getting meaningful reps from the start? The answer reveals itself through the contradiction. Rees's praise proves he knows Shadur can elevate this offense. But the organization's actions show they still cling to a plan centered around a safer, more conservative quarterback, one who avoids mistakes but also avoids big plays. So the compliments aren't just compliments, they're confirmation. Confirmation that Cleveland knows what they have and still isn't ready to commit to it. For all the praise, all the recognition of Shedur's arm talent and competitiveness, Tommy Rees eventually pulled the curtain back on something far more revealing and far more disturbing. Because once he started breaking down the challenges Shadur faced in his debut, it became brutally clear. The kid wasn't just battling the Ravens' defense. He was battling his own team's failures at the exact same time. Rees admitted that the moment Shadur entered the game, Baltimore changed everything. They amped up the pressure, sent heavier blitz packages, and dared the Browns to adjust. That's standard NFL strategy against a rookie. But here's the part that exposes the real dysfunction. Cleveland wasn't ready for it at all. The offensive line blew assignments. Protection calls weren't communicated. Blitz pickups were missed. Players weren't getting into the right checks. Rees said this directly, not as an excuse, but as a reality. And that reality is simple. The environment around Shadur collapsed the moment he stepped on the field. Sanders isn't just battling defenses on Sundays, he's fighting an entire organizational mindset that refuses to recognize what's right in front of them. This isn't about talent. It isn't about readiness. It isn't about who gives the Browns the best chance to win right now. It's about an organization clinging to a plan that stopped making sense weeks ago. Shadur walked into an impossible situation and still delivered glimpses of exactly the type of quarterback Cleveland hasn't had in years. He pushed the ball downfield, created explosive plays, and injected life into an offense that's been flatlining all season. He showed toughness under pressure, maturity in chaotic moments, and a confidence the city desperately needs in its quarterback. That kind of spark should earn you commitment. It should earn you trust. At the very least, it should earn you a real chance. Instead, the Browns responded with hesitation, carefully worded answers, downplayed praise, a subtle but unmistakable effort to keep the door wide open for Dillon Gabriel, no matter how little he actually moves this offense. It's a frustrating cycle that fans have seen far too many times. Talented players getting buried under indecision, mixed messaging, and a system that protects coaches more than it empowers athletes. And that's why the uncomfortable truth has to be said. If Cleveland isn't willing to build around Shadur, someone else will. There are teams across the league starving for a quarterback with his arm talent, composure, and upside. Franchises that would hand him the keys, not hide the ignition. Organizations that understand you don't stumble across players like this very often. If the Browns can't see what Shadur brings, They don't deserve him. And when he finally lands somewhere that believes in him fully, not cautiously, not conditionally, Cleveland will look back at this moment as the opportunity they let slip away. Because whether it happens here or somewhere else, Shedeur Sanders isn't just a player. He's a future franchise quarterback. And sooner or later, the NFL world is going to realize it. Nobody expected a simple midweek press conference to blow open the Browns' entire quarterback situation. On the surface, it looked routine. Tommy Rees sitting at the podium, giving the same polished, steady answers coaches give every week. But the moment he started talking about Shedeur Sanders, the tone shifted. Not loudly, not obviously. It was subtle, hidden between phrases, buried inside certain word choices, and exposed by what he didn't say as much as what he did. At first, Rees delivered the kind of clean textbook explanations you'd expect from an NFL coordinator. He talked about building confidence, shaping game plans around comfort, and trusting the process. Anyone half listening would have shrugged and moved on, but anyone paying attention could feel the knots tightening. The more he spoke, the clearer it became that this wasn't just a discussion about quarterback development. This was a glimpse into a franchise trying desperately to hold two competing realities together, even as they pull in opposite directions. Because behind Rees's calm tone, there was unmistakable tension. The kind that comes when a team knows its most talented quarterback isn't the one it has invested its identity in. The kind that surfaces when a coaching staff praises a rookie's arm talent while quietly preparing excuses for limiting his opportunity. The kind that only appears when the truth is too obvious to hide, but too uncomfortable to admit. Rees tried to walk a tightrope, protect the organization, protect the depth chart, protect the narrative. But in doing so, he revealed more than he intended. He showed the cracks. He showed the hesitation. He showed that despite everything Shadur did on the field, the coaching staff still wasn't ready to let go of their original plan. And that's why this press conference matters. Not because of the sound bites, but because of what they exposed. A franchise torn between what it wants to believe and what it can no longer ignore. A young quarterback showing he's ready. A coaching staff afraid of what that means. And a storyline that's far from finished. Tommy Rees started his press conference with what sounded like a masterclass in quarterback development. If you didn't know better, you'd think everything in Cleveland was functioning exactly the way a top-tier operation should. He talked about giving young quarterbacks comfort, building confidence, pulling concepts from their past systems, and designing plays that feel familiar the second they hear them in the huddle. On paper, it was perfect. It was safe. It was the kind of polished messaging you get from a coach who's been trained to make chaos sound like a plan. But the more he spoke, the more obvious it became that this picture wasn't nearly as tidy as he made it seem. Because every time Rees praised the process, he quietly dodged the real question. Why hasn't the most talented quarterback on the roster been the one getting the benefit of that process? When he talked about giving players plays they're comfortable with, he never mentioned that Shadur barely got first-team reps before being thrown into one of the toughest defensive matchups in the league. When he emphasized familiarity within the system, he glossed over the fact that Shadur has been learning the offense mostly from the sidelines. And when he talked about building confidence, he ignored the reality that confidence is impossible to build when you're only given scraps of opportunity. The philosophy sounded great until you realized Shadur hasn't been given the circumstances needed to actually benefit from it. And here's the part that really raises eyebrows. Rees never once said Shadur wasn't ready. He never criticized the rookie's performance. In fact, he repeatedly acknowledged Shedur's arm talent, poise, and ability to attack vertically, traits the Browns' offense desperately needs. But instead of leaning into that, he tiptoed around expectations, avoided committing to anything concrete, and spoke like a man trying to leave every exit door open. So yes, Rees's coaching philosophy looks clean on a whiteboard, but beneath it, you can feel the hesitation, the fear of disrupting the depth chart, the pressure to stick with the original plan, even when reality is screaming for a change. And that tension is exactly why this situation is far more complicated than the press conference made it seem. The moment Tommy Rees was asked about how a full week of first-team reps might impact Shedur's performance, everything shifted. Up until then, he'd been polished, steady, and safe. But that question hit a pressure point the Browns clearly didn't want exposed. Instead of taking the opportunity to build excitement around their rookie quarterback, or even offer a simple vote of confidence, Rees backed away from the question like it was a live wire. He insisted they don't put expectations on guys, especially young players. He said the focus was on the process, not the outcome. He repeated phrases about preparation, planning, and hoping things come to fruition. It all sounded thoughtful, until you realized what he didn't say. Not once did he say Shadur would improve with real reps. Not once did he say he expected growth. Not once did he acknowledge that giving a QB the keys for a full week should logically result in better performance. Instead, he softened the ground. He lowered the bar. He created space for excuses long before Sunday even arrived. That's not protecting a player. That's protecting the organization. Because when coaches truly believe in a quarterback, they don't speak in disclaimers. They lean into their confidence. They talk about upside, potential, and progress. They show belief. Rees didn't do that. He wrapped every sentence in bubble wrap and left every outcome open-ended, as if Cleveland is more worried about defending a future decision than supporting their current one. And that's what makes this moment so telling. He wasn't answering a question about performance. He was laying out the narrative framework the team might need if they want to pivot back to Dillon Gabriel without backlash. He was preparing the storyline, not the quarterback. So while the words sounded harmless, the message was loud. Rees is managing expectations, not raising them. He's preparing explanations, not building momentum. He's leaving the door cracked open, just wide enough for the Browns to walk backward through it if Shadur plays well, but not well enough to make their original plan impossible to defend. And if that doesn't expose the internal tug-of-war in Cleveland, nothing does. When the questions shifted toward Shedur's actual debut against Baltimore, something unexpected happened. Tommy Rees dropped the cautious tone and suddenly became complimentary. Not vague, not half-hearted, genuinely impressed. And that shift exposed far more than he intended. He talked about how tough it is for any quarterback to be thrown into a game cold, especially against a defense that lives off confusion and pressure. Instead of criticizing the rookie, think about it. A rookie quarterback getting thrown into the fire against one of the smartest defenses in the league, with no consistent first-team reps and an offense that instantly fell apart the second he entered the game. And somehow he's the one who gets evaluated? Somehow he's the one who gets labeled not ready? It's backwards. Completely backwards. While the media nitpicked every sack he took, Rees quietly revealed the truth. A lot of those pressures weren't Shedur's fault. The system around him broke down. The protection broke down. The timing broke down. And yet, despite being handed an impossible situation, he still produced moments that showed who he really is. A quarterback with the arm talent to challenge elite defenses and the poise to stand tall when the pocket collapses. Rees even went into the footwork issue reporters pointed out, the drifting backward under pressure. Yes, that happens with young quarterbacks, especially ones who don't trust their played. By the 2-minute drill, he was stepping up, reading the field, and firing accurate strikes. That's growth in real time. That's what a franchise QB looks like. And here's the painful part. That improvement would come even faster if he got actual developmental investment, consistent reps, planned preparation, and a system built to support him. Instead, he's being asked to perform miracles behind an inconsistent line with shaky chemistry, in a scheme that shifts depending on who's under center. This isn't a quarterback problem, it's an infrastructure problem. And the rookie is the one paying the price. Shadur didn't fail. He was set up to fail, and survived anyway. And that's exactly why this story is far from over. The most revealing moment of the entire press conference didn't come from a long explanation or a technical breakdown. It came from a single question, one that instantly, protection yet. But as Rees explained, the more comfortable Shadur got, the better he froze the room and finally exposed where the coaching staff's loyalty truly lies. A reporter asked Tommy Rees directly, in a perfect world, would you still prefer to see more of Dillon Gabriel moving forward? That's the kind of question coaches hate. It forces them to either tell the truth or dance around it. And Rees chose to dance. Hard. He immediately shifted into safe language, talking about process, long-term development, and continuing to improve all our guys. He mentioned that Gabriel was 7 for 10 before exiting the game, and that trajectory-wise, everything was looking the way they wanted. Not a single sentence mentioned what Shadur had done. Not a single moment acknowledged the obvious difference in arm talent or the spark he brought when the game looked lost. That avoidance was the answer. Because between every carefully chosen word, Rees delivered the message he didn't want to say out loud. The organization is still committed to Dillon Gabriel, no matter what the field says. This wasn't about performance. This wasn't about upside. This was about politics. The Browns already invested their time, their reps, and their belief in Gabriel. And now, even with a quarterback who clearly brings more juice, more big playability, and more upside, they're trying to protect their original plan. It's classic NFL ego. Coaches refusing to admit they might have misevaluated their guy. What makes it even more frustrating is that Rees clearly likes Shedur's talent. He praised the deep shots, the confidence, the explosive playmaking. But every compliment came with a disclaimer. Every positive came with a soft cushion to fall back on, in case the staff wants to pivot back to Gabriel. Instead of saying, yes, Shadur might earn this job, Rees essentially said, Dillon is still our project. That comment didn't reveal the future of the quarterback position. It revealed the agenda. And if Shadur wants a fair shot, he may have to fight not just defenses, but the very people coaching him. If there was one moment that revealed the truth about Cleveland's quarterback situation, one moment that stripped away politics, excuses, and coach speak, it was the deep shot concept they ran twice against Baltimore. Same play, same design, same read, but two completely different quarterbacks and two completely different outcomes. When Dillon Gabriel saw that play earlier in the game, he did exactly what a risk-averse quarterback does. Checked it down. Safe, predictable, low impact. It wasn't wrong, but it wasn't winning football. It was survival football. A tiny gain, a punt coming soon, and nothing for the defense to fear. But when Shedeur Sanders got the exact same call, he didn't blink. He trusted his arm. He trusted his receiver. And he attacked vertically with the kind of confidence that instantly changes the entire energy of a football team. That throw to David Njoku wasn't just a near-game winner. It was a statement, a snapshot of the kind of quarterback Shadur is, and the kind Gabriel isn't. Shadur plays to win. Gabriel plays not to lose. And for a Browns offense ranked dead last in explosive plays, dead last in first down production, and dead last in creating momentum, that difference is everything. What makes this even more revealing is Tommy Rees' reaction. He openly admitted he believed the final deep ball to Elijah Moore was going to be caught, because of how confidently Shadur launched it. That's the kind of trust coordinators only feel with quarterbacks who can flip a game in one throw. So why isn't that quarterback getting every opportunity? Why is the more dynamic player being treated like a temporary placeholder? Because that single play, not a stat sheet, not a press conference answer, blew up the myth that Gabriel and Shadur are close. They're not. One is safe, the other is dangerous in the best way possible. And deep down, the staff knows it. That's why they keep complimenting Shedur's arm talent while clinging tightly to process and development. Because once you admit that one throw changed everything, you can't go back. Cleveland's quarterback dilemma isn't really about mechanics, experience, or even performance. It's about fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of changing course, fear of committing to the quarterback who actually gives them a chance to win. And that fear is exactly why the Browns remain stuck in the same cycle year after year. Tommy Rees keeps talking about process, patience, and development. But those words have become a shield, carefully crafted phrases designed to justify sticking with a safe, familiar option instead of embracing a quarterback who can actually elevate the entire team. It's no secret anymore. Dillon Gabriel is the comfort pick. He's predictable, low variance, and won't challenge the system the coaching staff built. But he also won't push the offense forward. He won't scare defenses. He won't create the kind of explosive plays that turn losing teams into winners. Shedeur Sanders, on the other hand, represents everything Cleveland is terrified of. Bold throws, real aggression, and the possibility of a future they didn't expect. He threatens the pecking order. He challenges the staff's early season decisions. And perhaps most importantly, he forces them to admit the obvious. The quarterback they planned their season around might not be the right one. Instead of acknowledging that performance should dictate opportunity, the Browns have wrapped themselves in excuses, protection issues, receiver timing, playbook familiarity, all valid concerns. Yet those same issues magically become manageable when someone other than Shadur is under center. It's almost as if the staff is preparing the groundwork to return to Gabriel no matter how well Shadur plays. That's the tragedy of Cleveland football. The fear of being wrong outweighs the desire to win. And you can see it in every quote, every hesitation, every cautious compliment. Shadur isn't just fighting defenses. He's fighting an organization terrified of change. The Browns have a quarterback who can give them life, momentum, and identity. But until they stop coaching from fear, they'll never unlock what's right in front of them. When you step back and look at the full picture, one thing becomes painfully clear. Shadur,